back in the workshop today. And what we're going to do is repurpose a kinked cable restraint. So I had cut a fox in this last season, so it's not, you see how the cable is kinked, so it won't work properly. But you don't have to throw them out, you can repurpose them. And what I do with them is I make cable extensions for anchoring my DPs. So that's what this is. So you want a small loop on one end, and you want a large loop on the other end. Because what I'm going to do with it is I loop the cable with a small loop to the trap. So it's not a permanent attachment. I can still get that off of there. You just slide it open. But to anchor your trap, instead of running a stake into the ground, if you're running it along a riverbank, you're running it on the trail in the woods. Say if the lever here was my anchor, I can wrap it around the tree, pass the trap through it, and the chain, and then it will anchor to your tree. So it's really quick, it's really fast, and it's easy. It's easy to move them if you have to move them, but very simple to do. As you can see, here's our cable restraint. So I'll keep the pieces off the cable restraint. You can reuse those and just get the raw cable and then make another restraint with it. That's not that difficult to do, but I'll show you. We strip this down and then we'll make up the cable. Okay, a couple of basic tools. Small wire cutter. I got a big wire cutter, or you can use a swedger too if you want to use, if you have one of those. If you make a lot of cables and snares, the guys that do that a lot, they have a bench mounted, like a crimper, a swedger. This is an S-hook tool that I got. It actually has a cable cutter in it. It's for doing your J hooks or your S hooks, for opening them and closing them. That's what this tool is for, and it works really good for that. I bought it at one of the conventions here a couple of seasons ago, but that's an awesome tool. That was money well spent. You can see it's handmade. Somebody made it, but pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to undo the cable here. See, most of the cable is actually not that bad, but around where it gets caught and where they're pulling on it, it will kink, and then it won't close properly, it won't slide properly. So alright, what we're going to do is it got the swivel on the end here, so I'll cut it as close to the end. This has a cable cutter in it. Slide that over, snip it off. So now I'll take the swedge out. Keep the washer, keep the swivel. That piece is junk. So I want to keep don't try not to fry the end of the cable. See how I cut it nice and clean? So you want to keep that as clean as possible. And we're going to open the rest of it. Now there's a little crimp here, which is my livestock stop. So what I'll do is I'll use the wire cutter just to push that back open. See if it'll slide. It will slide. It'll twist on the cable. Twist it with the grain of the cable. So there's a little slide stop off. Our plastic collar for our cable mount. Take that off. Then we're going to go to the other end. You can see the fur in it. Get the cable cutter again. We're going to cut the J bend off. That makes light work of cable right there. So there's the J bend. That's going to be junk. We'll get rid of that. And then we have our relaxing lock and our breakaway. We'll keep that. And use that. And then I got one more. This is the deer stop lock. So we're going to get that a little bit of a squeeze, make it round again. Alright, as round as possible. Sometimes they'll come off, sometimes they won't. Depends on how hard they were crimped on before. I think that one's moving. Sometimes you have to twist them with the cable, like that. Okay, there's our lock off of that. Those you can reuse too. And now we have our straight piece of cable, or straight-ish piece of cable. You can see where the kink is here in it. That's not going to affect us. And what we're going to do is we're going to get some cable crimps. I got these at Tractor Supply. They're actually used for making electric fence, or any type of wire fence. That's what they're for. So we're going to slide that on our cable. The kinked end, I'm going to make the big loop. So we're going to slide that down. We're going to slide the cable through. You always want to make sure that the cable protrudes through the end of the crimp. You don't want the cable in the crimp like this, because then you can't tell if it's all the way through, and you can't tell if you're getting a good bite on it. You always want to make sure that the cable comes out the end of the crimp like that. So you'll make your loop nice and big. A little bigger than that. You want to make it so that you make sure that your dog-proof trap is going to fit right through it. And that does, so that's good enough for us with a little bit of slack on it. Make sure it's through the trail. Now, if you don't want to buy a very expensive swedger, you can use a regular bolt cutter like this to crimp these. You just have to be careful not to put so much tension on it that you're going to cut through it. So I usually do 3. I'll line that up, watching my fingers so I don't catch my fingers in it. Crush it a little bit, check it. So that's pretty well compressed. Move down a little bit, go into the center, compress it again, go down a little bit, and then right at the end, gotta compress it again. And what this does is it works on friction. So you can see that I've crushed that collar down in 3 different spots on both sides. So now that actually has crushed down into that cable, and it makes it very, very tight. I mean, I would not physically be able to pull that out of there. It's super, super tight. So you can do it with, like I said, with a cutter like that. You just have to watch how much tension you put on it and watch how much you're crushing it, because if you go too much, it's just going to cut right through it. You can also, if you want, you can dull the edges of the cutter just on the inside. Leave the sharp point on the outside and then dull the edge of it in here so that it's flat instead of like a pinched edge, and it will do the same thing. But it works just like that. It'll do just fine. Now this side we're going to do the small loop. So we get our swedge on here again. Slide that on there. This has some sort of grit compound inside it. It's easier to get it looped over. Feed the cable through. Again, make sure that the cable comes out through the bottom of the lock. And then we're going to slide this back up so our loop is smaller. We only need the small loop on this side. Just enough to fit it through. Just like that. So you can see my cable is protruding here again. And then we're going to go back to the gripper. Start at the bottom. You're going to push, open, go to the center. Push, open it, go to the top. Get it lined up straight. Push. Stop. And there's our crimp. And that crimp is, like I said, it's solid. I mean, I can put a lot of force on that. I could probably hang my whole body weight from it and it would never pull out. But now, there's our repurposed cable extension. So I can use this for anchoring my DPs. Pretty slick. To anchor it to the trap. Let's have one here. So to anchor it to the trap, just push the loop through the swivel. Push your big loop through this end. And then that's anchored to your cable right there. So it's anchored to the chain of the trap, like that. And then this end you do the same thing like I showed you before. If this was their tree, wrap it around the tree. Push the dog proof through it. And then that end is going to anchor to the tree, just like that. Works pretty simple. It's quick and effective, and it works really well. Alright, so there you have it. That's how you make a cable extension from repurposing it from a cable restraint. Like I said, there's no point in throwing it out. The other components from the cable you can keep, and like I said, you can buy cable raw and make your own. You just have to make sure that your measurements are correct. For a lot of states, I know, especially for states that regarding cable restraints, there's, you know, minimum and maximum specifications for the type of cable you use, the length of the cable you use. Like I said, the livestock stuff, so the loop will only open so much, and then the deer stuff, so the loop will only close so much. So you have to, there's regulations for it. You have to know where to put those components, but other than that, you can reuse them and build your own. But yeah, those cable anchors work really well. Actually, the first time I started using them was last season. Robbie Gilbert from Trapping Time TV had sent me some, and they work really well. They're very quick, and it's very efficient. Like I said, you can move the trap really easily without having to pull stakes or anything like that. They work really, really well. But all right, we'll see you on the next one.